She's not coming, sorry.
Okay, we will call the regular Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, March 1st to order, and we will start with the pledge. Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Tuchinski?
Here.
Commissioner Bennett? Commissioner Evans? Commissioner Oregi?
Here.
Commissioner Law? Vice Chair Howlett?
Here.
And Chair Scott?
Present.
Thank you.
Item number 2, and I will turn it over to Deputy Director, Community Development. You got a new name tag.
I've had the title, but I guess I got a new name tag. Yeah, that's kind of that's a mouthful. Anyway, the next item on the agenda was election of new chair and vice chair, but I was going to recommend that we wait until we have the full membership, or at least 6, but that gives everyone an opportunity to kind of weigh in and see what the interest really is.
Do you need a formal vote on us delaying that? No?
I mean, if there's general concurrent, then...
Concurrent?
Sure. We will just identify it for the next meeting.
Okay, yes, next meeting. Thank you. Item 3, ex parte communication. I will start to my right.
I drove by the site of the item number 3.
Thank you.
None.
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 Great. Item 4, consent agenda. Consent agenda can be approved with one motion, and I did have one edit. On item 6, it says Ken Fleming brought up the fact. I'm wondering if we could just say brought up, because we didn't independently verify that. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a fact.
Yeah. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
No.
I got a motion, second?
I'll make the second.
Okay, so motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of February 1st as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that motion carries 5-0. Item 5, public hearing items, tentative parcel map PMPDP 1701. And I will turn it over to Senior Planner Solly. No, ooh, Shannon.
Is this on? Yes. Thank you, members of the board, or the commission, I'm sorry. Let's see, this is, let me get this up here. All right, this is a proposal to divide a 0.74 acre parcel at 979 Myrtle Avenue into 3 lots for residential development. The site is located on the south side of Myrtle Avenue between Manzanita Avenue and North Avenue. It's designated low-density residential by the general plan land use diagram and is zoned R1 AOD, which is low-density residential with aircraft operations zone D. And here you'll see an aerial of the site. The project includes a vesting tentative parcel map and plan development permit. The proposed parcel map would subdivide the property into 3 parcels, 1 standard residential lot up front measuring 8,925 square feet, with 2 infill residential flag lots behind measuring 6,035 square feet and 7,260 square feet. The project would yield a residential density of 4 units per acre, which is within the allowed range of 2.1 to 7 units for the R1 zoning district. A 25-foot accessway is proposed along the west portion of the site, providing access to the 2 rear parcels as well as adequate fire truck turnaround. Here we go. This is the plan development site plan. The plan development permit is necessary to modify the development standard that infill residential flag lots shall be no smaller than the smallest conforming lot in the same zoning district lying wholly or partially within 300 feet of the proposed subdivision or 6,000 square feet, whichever is greater. As required for a plan development permit, conceptual review of the site design and architecture was completed and staff recommends approval. So in conclusion, staff level conceptual review of the site design and architecture was done. A neighborhood meeting was held and staff recommends approval.
Are there any questions for staff? Start to my right.
I asked you this, but I'd like you just to repeat it so everybody else knows. How many exceptions to the minimum size for a lot in flag lots have been granted in Chico?
I'm not aware, nor was any staff that I spoke to aware of any plan development permits where this particular exception was needed.
And the other thing, if you could explain too, is the how this might impact the other things in the area. You mentioned a 10% rule about flag lots.
Yes, so infill residential flag lot standards, along with this requirement that within 300 feet they be no smaller than the smallest lot, also says that within a 300-foot radius, no more than 10% of the lots can be a flag lot. So by placing 2 flag lots here, we're therefore taking up some of that 10% for the lots surrounding the area. So if we did get another request like this within the vicinity, we'd have to run that 10% calculation on each lot.
Any other questions? To my left? Commissioner Evans?
So, seems to be, it shouldn't be too controversial, but if anybody has an issue with this, it would be the neighbors. And there was a neighborhood meeting, is that correct?
That's right. We held a neighborhood meeting back in August.
But we don't get any details of how many people were there or what their complaints were. Were you in attendance?
I was.
How many neighbors were there?
About 11.
And concerns?
Concerns regarding traffic. Because the road is located next to the elementary school, they do have high traffic impacts for pickup and drop-off hours, and so traffic was a concern. And then, of course, like we spoke about, would other people be able to do this type of project as well?
So there was concern about density issues that you'll get a chance. There'll be other, there was concern about more, similar exemptions that would put more houses in
the feeling I got from it was people concerned about if they would be allowed to do the same project for their parcels.
And your answer to that was?
We would run that calculation for each parcel. If the flag lots exceeded 10%, then potentially, or they would be required to do a plan development permit like this map had to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thanks. So with that, we will open the public hearing. We will begin with the applicant and then open it up to the general public. The applicant will then have the opportunity to come back and address any comments that were made by the public. We don't have a stoplight in here like we had the fortune of having in the chambers, but you are limited to 3 minutes, and we will be monitoring time up here. So when we hit the 3 minutes, I'll kindly ask you to please wrap up your comments and have a seat. Mr. Gilbert, welcome.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Wes Gilbert, Gilbert Engineering, representing the engineer for the project and so forth. We have no problems with staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and would hope that the commission would approve the parcel map.
Any questions of Mr. Gilbert? Commissioner Tuchinski.
Sure. Were there any topographical features or anything that required the lots to be the size that they were, or simply just that was the best configuration for the property?
That was the best configuration with the existing house in front. you know, because we got to give it adequate space and everything, that existing house, and then we just took what was left over and basically divided it in two. Yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Feel free to come up to the podium. And then once you're finished, I'll have you sign in on the clipboard.
Okay. Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with Myrtle Avenue, let me fill you in on the street. It is 0.2 of a mile in length, not even 1/4 of a mile. We already have 23 single residences, 18 apartment units of 2 to 3 bedrooms each. In addition, the 2 houses on the corner of North and Myrtle, their driveways empty out onto Myrtle. It's known as the cut-through street between Manzanita and North. Traffic that wants to avoid the East Avenue and Cohasset intersections. We have a junior high and the card recreation pool around the corner on North. Parking just from those 18 units, apartment units, covers both sides of Myrtle, and on the weekends it can extend halfway down the street on both sides. We have some school bus traffic and an enormous amount of school traffic by parents in the morning and again in the afternoon and on special events. The parking for special events, graduation, things like that, goes up and down our street, both sides, and it leaves barely a single lane down the middle for emergency vehicles. It becomes a narrow one-lane road. We even have parents that have tried to park in our driveway. This plot at 979 Myrtle will be adding to this existing congestion for the small street with 2 to 3 new homes. I would like to know, will they allow for enough parking at the residences and not allow them to park on the street? Most single-family homes have 2+ vehicles with boats and RVs. Are you going to allow all this parking on the street also? And what is the legal street parking allowance? We now have so much traffic that it can be a challenge just backing out of our own driveways. Since the 6th grade is now at Bidwell Junior High, traffic has more than doubled, and we now have 10 times the amount of students walking to and from school using Myrtle. And I am not in favor of this new construction. Thank you.
Thank you. Assistant Planner Costa, can you address the parking question?
You can see on the site plan here that, as required by infill residential flag lot standards, 4 parking spaces are provided for each parcel. So you can see they have 2 garage parking spaces and in addition to 2 other parking spaces on site. So they do meet the parking requirements for infill residential flag lots.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Feel free to come up. And if you don't mind, if you could state your name too for the record.
My name is Daniel R. Ferguson, and this is my wife Joyce. We have lived at 998 Myrtle for 19 years. My first question to the commission is this a done deal? We weren't available. We were out of town for the neighborhood meeting, and we apologize. We didn't get to partake in that. Is the original house going to be torn down to make room for 3 lots? We live there. We drive by every day, and there's a garage back there. And I don't know how they're going to access all these back lots here with the garage there. I don't know if it's they're going to tear that down or what. These new flag lots do not meet minimum size according to the public notice that we received in the mail. It states right on there, so why are we here? I think the Planning Commission should concentrate more on infrastructure before allowing more housing, or should I say infilling. Allowing these additional houses mean having at least 6 additional vehicles, not including boats, trailers, or whatever else gets parked along Myrtle Avenue. Parking on Myrtle Avenue is a problem with apartment complexes in the corner of Manzanita Avenue. We are under the understanding that those apartments were being considered at the time. They would provide enough parking off the street. Somebody dropped the ball on that one. And the sewer, which direction is the sewer going to take? And are they going to repair the damage back to the original surface? We just had it, Myrtle resurfaced about 5-6 years ago, and for some reason they stopped a couple hundred yards from Manzanita for whatever reason, and we got all potholes down there where all these people are parking. So we want to make sure that it gets back to the original condition that it's in. I want to suggest to the commission to drive down Myrtle Avenue during school hours, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 2:15 to 3 p.m. and on Wednesdays especially 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's a zoo. All the kids get dropped off at school. They go down to Dutch Brothers, get their coffees or whatever, walking up the street. They don't even get on the sidewalk, and we got all the families dropping their kids off and stuff. It's quite dangerous. I've talked to the principal over there. We're supposed to have a meeting, and that fell through. So I don't know what's going on there. Due to the existing conditions on Myrtle Avenue with the parking on both sides, it hampers emergency service vehicles. I'm not in favor of this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. So we have a couple questions here. I'm not sure if you can answer them, but will the original house be torn down? Will the garage be torn down? And which direction will the sewer go?
The parcel map does indicate that the original house will stay. The detached garage that's located in the back where the new private access easement would go will be demolished. And I guess, or I'm not sure exactly, Matt Johnson might be able to speak to the direction of the sewer, but I imagine it'll come from Manzanita. We don't know yet.
Great, thank you. No, you're good. I'll bring you back up at the end. Matt's right behind you. Any further public comment? Feel free to come up.
Hi, my name is Allison. So I am the direct neighbor on this west side where the driveway will be. My main concern is having 3 children is going to be the noise and the construction. Right now we have an open backyard where there's no fence and no official survey submitted within the county. So the lines are yet to be determined. I had talked with the owner, Joanne, about putting up a fence, and so we're in agreement with that, but my main concern would be that the fence goes up before construction or demolition goes. I have a 4-year-old, he's gonna run and go play on their backhoes or construction tools, anything he can get his hands on. My second concern would be if this is approved, since they are all fairly large lots, say we decide to develop something in the late future in the back, would that limit our ability to do that? I know you talked about something about a 10% in the neighborhood, so would that directly affect me? I guess third concern would be our family being able to tap into the sewer if it does come through. I would say I'm neither in favor nor against the building as long as some of those specific concerns get addressed and met before, you know, you got people demoing and the construction noise and dust and all of that. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you, Allison. Any further public comment? He can come up too.
My name is Nick Jenkins. I'm living right there. I'm Allison's husband. And my only concern is with the fence really getting put up. I would really like for there to be a blockade between this property and my own. They've already done some construction on the front house. It was really not even basically livable, and they had quite a bit of stuff that they were doing. And I don't think that they were really following what I would consider adequate guidelines for dealing with debris and whatnot. And so if that isn't addressed, like first and foremost, then I'm completely against the construction. And if it is dealt with in an appropriate manner, then I would say that I would be all for whatever these people want to do. That would be all.
Mr. Jenkins, I was abrupt with you, and I apologize for that.
Thank you.
And if you could grab the clipboard and sign in, that would be great. Mr. Gilbert, there's no other public comment? Do you want to address any of the comments? No. Any questions before we close the public hearing?
Well, actually, the question on when the fence will be constructed, before, after demolition starts?
The fence will be constructed along the perimeter of this parcel as a part of the development of the parcels, yes.
Before demolition, so her children feel...
I doubt it.
Is there a way to make that feasible for the project, to have it constructed before? With getting equipment in and out?
If it's a condition, yeah, then we'll make it work.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Mr. Gilbert? No? Thank you.
You woke me up again.
So with that, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. We do have Exhibit 1, the conditions of approval. Are there any amendments that would like to be proposed for this?
Yeah, it sounds like I don't believe that building a fence beforehand should be too much of a problem, especially if that makes it safer for the neighbor. I'm willing to entertain objections from my fellow commissioners if they think that's too unreasonable of a condition, but I would like to see that added if that's at all possible.
You know, I don't think building a fence is a problem, but having access, once there's a fence there for all his construction crews and stuff, I'm sure is problematic. But, as Mr. Gilbert said, I think they can overcome that.
Senior Planner Solly?
I just want to add a possible option for the commission to consider. If it doesn't make sense to construct the finished fence early in the process because there might be grading concerns or something like that, they could certainly erect temporary construction fencing, sturdy snow fencing along that border to keep it separate from the neighbors and control the access to the site.
Okay. And as far as making sure that's up before any construction happens, what would be the process for that, just so that the neighbors do know how that looks?
It would be similar to tree protection fencing. When we have protected trees fenced ahead of time, planning staff shall inspect the fencing prior to commencement of demolition or grading operations.
Is the commission amenable to that?
Yes, it sounds to me like that would solve the purpose and, you know, in Solomon's way, split the difference, so.
Any further discussion?
I do. I want to review the flag lot again, and if we allow this to go through and how that affects the neighbors down the line with the 10%. Can you explain that to me again?
So, yeah, one of the development standards for an infill residential flag lot says that no more than 10% of the lots within a 300-foot radius of the site can be flag lots. So for each site, we run a 300-foot buffer, count the lots, and I think for this particular case, there was 30 lots, I want to say, and it was 0.7, so that came out to be 0.7%. Maybe there's 33 lots. So for any proposal that came in that fell within, that these two new flag lots fell within their 300-foot buffer, they would be counted towards that 10% and could potentially throw them over that 10%. I see. Okay. If that is the case, a plan development would allow them to still proceed with the map much like they are today.
So I had a question, Shannon, just to be sure, the the lots are substandard size for the general plan zoning. Are they substandard size for plan unit development zoning standards?
The lots don't meet the minimum requirement that says that the lots within 300 feet, the lots shall be no smaller than the smallest conforming lot within 300 feet. They do conform to regular flag lot standards, which are 6,000 square feet, and in other cases where we've processed flag lots as part of a map, in most cases, they only have to meet the 6,000 square feet because there's a smaller lot nearby.
So what's our guiding principle here? Which one should we be using?
They can be no smaller than the smallest conforming lot. And so, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. But they are, just to be clear, they are smaller than that. Correct? They're 6,000. The conforming lot was 8,229, and these are 6,000. Okay.
So the 8,000 has now become their minimum lot size, and they don't meet that.
And they don't meet that. Okay, that's what I wanted to be sure.
I just want to add that I think what should be driving you is the flag lot standards, as well as all of our standards, are intended to provide guidance. If something is inconsistent, then you're looking at it as a yellow flag, no pun intended.
Right.
In this case, the goal that you should be focusing on is consistency with the neighborhood, compatibility. I consider those to be your driving forces. And so she's kind of pointing out a nuance that why it might not meet that nuance of the code. Overall, it meets our standards for single-family lots. Right. It's reasonable. It's not getting jammed in, so to speak.
And you brought up my second point, Brandon, which was the neighborhood, preserving the neighborhood character of the neighborhood where such lots are created. How do we determine what that is? I mean, to me, I look at that map and I see a lot of 3/4 acre size lots, not three. But there, I mean, there's a few that looks like have been subdivided over the years or before the general plan or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, I'm not sure how I would characterize the character of that neighborhood.
And that's why you're here. It's a discretionary action. If it was just a single-family parcel, we have a lot of situations like this all over the community, these larger lots. The flag lot standards give us an opportunity for infill, something we desire in our general plan, but we also have nuances in our general plan that say, in some places, infill's easier, more desired. In some places, we need to be more sensitive and focus on that neighborhood compatibility.
Right.
We bring the findings to you. We bring you the package. We tell you our recommendation. You can visit the site, hear the testimony, and draw your own conclusions.
So the only, on this current map, I see one that looks like it's the same parcel size that's been divided into three up near the top right up there. The other ones, I assume, are office residential, the pink. So those would be commercial properties. So there's one residential site that looks like it's been into three, but it's on a corner lot. So that's technically not a flag lot, it's just three lots. So this would be a new, although the one off Aline down there, that looks like, maybe, was that a larger parcel that was divided into four? Do you know, Mike, that one?
I don't know. I think that happened in the county, but it looks like two flag lots behind two single-family homes to me.
Okay, all right.
I'm pretty sure the flag lot on Myrtle, on the left-hand side of the screen there, was created in the city after annexation. I think annexation took place in like 2006 here.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is preponderance of what you're seeing here is county development.
Okay.
It has been annexed by the city, and now we have people operating under the city rules.
What area, what time was this annexed?
I want to say 2006. That's when a lot of these annexations took place. Although it could be a couple years off, but
okay, so somewhere around 2006. Okay. All right, those were my questions and comments. Thank you.
Any further questions, discussion?
Oh, we could have a little more discussion. I drove through the neighborhood twice, once trying to consider, the flow of the neighborhood, the sidewalks of the neighborhood, parking, those sorts of elements. I didn't drive through during the rush hour school time, I guess fortunately for me. So I did drive, partly to try to consider how these houses would fit in with the other houses that were there. They were, again, relatively low elevation level, single-family houses. Tried to peek as much as I could through to the back and see what the lots were. I drove on a lean street to kind of try to peek through. But again, I'm not going to walk through people's houses, so I did what I could see from the street. And this was sort of an agonizing thing for me a bit, because I did ask a whole lot about the lot sizes and about, again, making the precedent of setting the stage for future development in the neighborhood and what that might mean. And again, whether this, 6,000 that was acceptable in another neighborhood matched in this neighborhood. Does that make any sense? That's part of what we're talking about here, is a matter of numbers, because 6,000 square foot lots are acceptable in other neighborhoods, but we're dealing with the context of this neighborhood. Since we're talking about building single-family houses here with parking that's adequate, four spaces, so that there is going to be mitigation parking impacts on the street, I feel okay about that. I seem to feel okay about the sizes of the lots, and the fact that if other people, the 10% rule was explained, that if it's not that we're going, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if we hit that 10% mark and other people want to develop, they would simply have to come before the commission. It would be a more complicated procedure for them, but it's not going to preclude them necessarily from developing. Is that correct?
Their map would have to come before the commission in addition to a planned development permit like this application.
Correct. So it doesn't mean that people can't do it. If we approve this one and the neighbors then want to do it, they're not precluded from doing it. So again, we're not talking about, again, building, multifamily housing in the back. We're talking about building houses that are comparable in the neighborhood. So again, I know this is slightly rambly, but I'm giving kind of impressionistic things from having driven through the neighborhood a few times. I would have a bigger problem with it if these were houses that were really different than in the neighborhood, and if there weren't self-contained parking within these houses. That's why, again, after much scrutiny and much questioning, that's why, frankly, I only really raised the question of the neighbor about the safety of their children versus the lot sizes, simply because of that. That's my own issue. When I came into it very concerned about setting an exception, that's why I asked if it's the first one done in the city. I worry about, setting a precedent, but, I feel a bit more comfortable knowing that there are other avenues.
Any comments? No? I'd love to entertain a motion, if there is one.
Okay, I'll take it on. I move that the Planning Commission, excuse me, adopt resolution number 18-02 approving the parcel map and plan development permit subject to the attached conditions, which include a temporary fence during construction.
Okay.
A proper motion?
Yes, I'll probably want to add something, but let's get a second first.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. And would you be amenable to having the language that Senior Planner Sally offered of planning staff shall
inspect the fencing prior to commencement of grading or demolition?
Okay. And then I think we should address the permanent fencing as well as a condition.
Yes.
That permanent fencing should be in place before, can we do it before occupancy permits are issued, or?
Oh, yeah, and I mean, you could even have the condition say, construct the permanent fencing unless infeasible, and then do the temporary fencing only if it isn't, and then have the permanent fencing in place by occupancy.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. I like permanent fencing by occupancy. I agree. Are you amenable? Are you amenable?
I'm amenable, yes.
Okay. So let's make that condition 22. Okay, any further discussion? That was a little sloppy, but we'll see. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yes.
So that motion carries 4-1. And I believe we have the Ferguson's contact information. Is that something we could work with them on having them know the parking rules and who to call if they do have issues with people parking boats or RVs longer than they should be on the street? Okay, great, thank you. Item 6, regular agenda, and we will go to item 6.1, Sustainability Task Force update. And
quickly going to introduce Sustainability Task Force Chair Mark Stamen. He's going to provide an overview of the task force's efforts last year and what they're planning on working on this year. And then following him, Molly Marcusson, I think I said that correctly, our Civic Spark Fellow for the City of Chico, is going to share briefly what she's working on for the city to adapt to climate change. So, over to Mark.
Dr. Stamen.
Hi, I'm trying to figure out my little setup here.
So we've moved on, but I'm sure Shannon can help you out with it. Sorry. No, we've closed the public hearing and we voted on the item. But Shannon can help you out. Sorry about that.
Hi, how y'all doing? Nice to see you again tonight. So this is our annual update of the Sustainability Task Force. We actually updated the council last week, and I apologize for that. We wanted to update you first, but you didn't want to have a meeting just for me, and I didn't take offense to that, and so that's why we're kind of doing it afterwards. I updated the task force, the council on the two main things that we've done for the task force, which are to put forward a remodel retrofit ordinance, which is going to be for those areas. I'll wait. Oh, no, that's quite all right. Oh, hi, folks. Okay. Remodel retrofit ordinance, which will be coming forward to, I believe, the planning committee. I don't know where it will go first, if it comes here, if it goes to the council. It will go to council. That will help us get to the older housing stock in the community. The other item I updated was the million-watt challenge that we had. That was highly successful. We got actually 1.5 million watts. And we felt really good about also educating the community about what we were doing in that respect. What I also updated the council, and what I wanted to spend most of my time talking to you tonight about, was the other work that we have been doing. The Climate Action Plan also requires the city to begin developing adaptation strategies to prepare for the changing climate. Greenhouse gases take about 15 years from release to impact. So the greenhouse gases that are going to affect us in 2030 have already been released. We can only adapt to those. And because of that, recent legislation, SB 397, mandates that cities and counties make changes to their general plan. So the Sustainability Task Force has taken advantage of this opportunity to begin the adaptation planning process, and we continue to do that the coming year. For the past 6 months, with the help of Civic Spark, Molly Marcusson, we've been working on adaptation planning for the city. What you have in front of you, and this is the little blue thing that I wanted to show you, is the first step of that, which is a climate vulnerability assessment. We were using the California Energy Commission's web-based tool, CalAdapt. We have forecast the climate of Chico through the end of the century. We're able to forecast the direct impacts of temperature and precipitation, and then the secondary impacts of snowpack and wildfire. Basically, climate around the world is based on your temperature and your precipitation. When those starts to change, then other things change as well. And for us, it's going to be our snowpack and our wildfire. The main 4 areas for adaptive planning are extreme heat and its impact on vulnerable populations, increased flooding and its impact on infrastructure, increased wildfire in the foothills and potentially Bidwell Park, and decrease snowpack and the impact to city landscapes. So we're going to continue to work on this over the rest of the year, and Molly's going to talk a little bit about it. But one of the things I wanted to highlight for this is you see it's two-sided. And on one side is the high emission scenario, and the other is the low emission scenario. And so in the low emission scenario, the CalAdapt does two different ways. In lowered emissions, we're going to start dealing with climate change. Emissions will peak by 2040 and then start to decline. The other high emission scenario is that we will continue business as usual. Emissions will build through 2050 and eventually start peaking somewhere around the end of the century. So you can look at the difference, and it's quite striking. One of the things that we can talk about is that you see a historical average at the top of this. That is from 1950 to 1990. We actually have data since then, and for the period 2005 to 2015, we're actually running at about a 76.7 average. We're already 2 degrees above average. It's even more striking if we think of one of the things that's not listed here, which is extreme heat days. Extreme heat is considered the 98th percentile of any locale, and for us, that's 104. We historically average about 4 extreme heat days a year. From 25 to 2015, we're now up to 8. It's doubled. By 2030, we're looking at doubling again to 16, and by 2070, we're up to 30. And that's in the low emission scenario. If we go to the high emission scenario, by 2070, we're looking at 60 days of 104 temperatures above, 2 full months. While that's striking and something we need to talk about, I think the important thing we need to notice is the difference between 30 and 60 is us. What we do now determines the future climate of our children, whether they have 30 or 60. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the impacts. One of the things that was also really striking is I gave this presentation to the City Council at the same time they were talking about their street fee impacts. And they were talking about a number of the things that were going on. And one of the suggestions is to subsidize certain types of development and lower the street fee impact through the general plan contributions. You can't change the formulas, you can't change the nexus, but you could subsidize, and that's what they were talking about. And I encouraged them, and I want to strongly encourage you, keep your pennies. You have a lot of street problems coming up. One of the things about this is that about 104, 105, asphalt starts to emulsify, which means it starts to come apart. You're going to have 30 days in which your streets are going to start melting. We don't need to be subsidizing anything else. We're going to have to be fixing our streets. One of the biggest problems with this is that we're going to have increased heat, which means we're also going to have increased evaporation, which means we're going to have increased precipitation. And there are going to be more extreme storms. So we're going to have quite a few bridges in town that are not going to meet current flooding standards. We're going to need to fix those bridges. Keep your pennies. I mean, we've got a number of impacts that are coming up. One of the things that Molly's going to be doing, one of the things that we're going to be doing with next year's Civic Spark interns is actually start looking at which bridges are the ones that we have to start worrying about, which areas of places that we're going to start to flood. What they're looking at the state is that right now we're supposed to be meeting 100-year flood standards. And they realize with increased precipitation, we're going to need to meet 200-year flood standards. We don't. So we're going to have to do that inventory. This is coming. This isn't something that we have to worry about. It's very easily modeled. This is coming after the IPCC's 5th assessment. CalAdapt is something that was put together by the Berkeley Geospatial Labs for the California Energy Commission. I mean, this is as homegrown as it gets, and this is what it's telling us. And so I just want us to be thinking about these things as they go forward. The beautiful thing about it is we have time. We can start to plan. And that's what I think this commission's all about, so we can start thinking about these things that are coming up. I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Dr. Stamen? Commissioner Tuchinski?
Sure. We have time kind of seems counterintuitive when you talked about at the beginning that we're emitting gases now that are impacting us in the future, and also that there are folks that in the climate change field who have the doomsday scenario that say we may already be too late. Could you explain why you think we have time and how much time you think we have to plan versus jumping on board and acting?
I think that we have time to be preparing for the impacts that are going to be arriving in 2030 to 2040. right? From the greenhouse gases we're emitting and the ones that we're still going to emit as we try to dial these things back. I think we have time to start dialing back the impacts to make them less than they would be in 2050 than they would be if we did nothing. We're still within the parameters of adaptation. At a certain point, we lose that, right? And so I think that in that sense, we do have the time to be able to stop. Things are going to change, and things for us are going to change, but we have them that planning window is open. It won't be open for long, right? It'll always be open. The plans will get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, right? But we have a plan that I think is something that we would all accept as a good place to land in Chico if we start acting. And I think we are. I mean, one of the nice things that we're going to be able to do is come back to you from the Sustainability Task Force saying that we have been reducing greenhouse gases. We have been making progress. I think one of the things that we're going to find out that's probably most pleasing is the compact urban form is working. We're driving less per person. We're still driving more than we should be, but we're driving less per person. So we're making progress. We have that time, but it's imperative we act now.
Vice Chair Hallett?
Yeah, so Mark, what other, in our region, what other municipalities or agencies are using the CalAdapt software? And
Everyone.
Everyone. So Yuba City, Marysville.
When they get around to it. I don't say everyone's doing adaptation planning actively, but anyone who's doing it is using CalAdapt. I mean, this is coming out of the state. We're trying it at this level to model some of the really good activities that are happening elsewhere. A city that's done a really good job that we think in modeling is Encinitas. Yeah. So it's top to bottom. People are using this. It is what the state is encouraging. It really is, as Planning Commission started to say, what do we have to do? What are the impacts? This is the response. It's pretty detailed. I mean, we can model climate to zip code. I mean, we can actually model 3 different climate scenarios for Chico. Right. It varies about 1/10 of a degree, right? Not much, but that's the level of precision that we've got.
So in terms of regional cooperation, is your task force working with other task forces in the area, or that type of thing? Or?
I think it's more, I don't know if it's as lateral as that, it's more up to the state and down to the state kind of thing, so that we're trying to work with the state, and the state is very active. I mean, it is a great place to be a climate activist if you want to, because there is so much engagement at the state level. So it does make it that I do have hope. Part of what you're trying to sense of a risk assessment is how much you're already doing. Right. And if you're not doing anything, you're really in trouble. We're doing stuff, so we're not in trouble. But we got to keep moving forward.
The reason I ask that is one of the criticisms when I talk about this with people out in the community is, well, the city of Chico can do all this stuff right, but what if, Yuba City, Marysville, what if Paradise, what if they do nothing to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, then what impact is that going to have? Are we going to have any impact just doing it here locally?
I think part of the adaptation process is going to mean that, yeah, we're going to be ready when other places aren't. So if our bridges are sound, if our roads are solid, when other people fall apart, we won't. So I think that's the important part. The other thing is you don't have to worry about Yuba City, you have to worry about Nevada, right? If they're in California, they're going to do this. It's getting around to it. It's the other states to try to catch up. I think California has done a pretty good job. I think there was a press release today about being able to meet all of these without damaging the economy as everyone says it would. So our economy continues to be solid from in large part responding to these things. I'm hopeful. I mean, unfortunately, I do this way too much, and it can be way too depressing, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that we're actually making the progress that we need to make.
And if I can just add, folks come and talk and share with us what they're doing, like PG&E, Cal Water, Butte County, BCAG, the regional planning agency. So there's discussions that take place between the different groups and people that are acting at a larger level than the city of Chico.
Okay, good.
I'm pleased with what Chico's doing. I am highly impressed with what Butte County is doing. I mean, Butte County is really, in some sense, leading the state in a number of these areas.
Any further questions? Ready for Molly?
Yeah, if I could just, I want to introduce Molly Marcuse and give her a little podium time, and also get your camera out, make sure we get a picture of this. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Molly Markson and I am the Civic Spark Fellow. I actually
am splitting my time between the city of Chico and Butte County. So I am helping both the city and the county meet SB 379 regulations. A big factor in that is conducting this vulnerability assessment. So that's where the bulk of my time has been. I actually made the table that Mark passed out to you today. I was working with him and his class on conducting this assessment. And right now I'm actually kind of in the finishing stages of wrapping that up. So what I've been doing is taking those numbers and using that, how are those numbers going to affect the different points of sensitivity within the city and the county? So how is that going to affect the agriculture system? How is that going to affect public health? And I'm finishing that up right now, and kind of what's next is to sit down with city and county staff and look at, what are we already doing to address these issues, and then look at risk and onset, how likely are these going to happen, and how quick are they going to happen, and how bad is it going to be? Once that pretty much is the vulnerability assessment, and then after that, I will kind of work with the city and the county staff to propose some adaptation strategies. I unfortunately probably won't be around for that because I'm done here in August. But yeah, that's what I've been working on, and just kind of wanted to introduce myself to you all.
Thank you.
So,
Great. Yeah. Any questions for Molly?
I'll just add that we're really fortunate to have this partnership we created with Civic Spark. This is our second Civic Spark Fellow, and incredible bang for the buck. It's sponsored through the governor and AmeriCorps, and of course what we get is not just something that we're doing that the Climate Action Plan tells us to do. That's great. We also have some things that the state has told us we need to do and incorporate into our safety element, incorporate into for the county their their hazard mitigation planning, and so we're getting tangible, real work product. We have a very cheap consultant on board doing great work, collaborating with the university, working with senior city staff and Butte County staff. So it's kind of a great partnership that I'm really happy that we've created.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, item 7, business from the floor. Members of the public may address the commission at this time on any matter not already listed on the agenda. Is there any business from the floor? Nope. Okay. Item 8, reports and communications.
Just two quick things. I was fortunate enough this week to have a tour of the council chambers under construction in the conference rooms, and it's really exciting. You're all going to be happy. I mean, I kind of enjoy this area, but over there it's going to be state-of-the-art and some nice improvements, both aesthetically but also functionally. And so be excited. The anticipated date for the first council meeting is April 16th, so we will be soon thereafter. And the facilities manager seems fairly confident they're going to make that deadline. So be excited.
And a working stoplight?
New chairs, it's literally...
Will the power be cut from the microphone at 3 minutes?
Upgrade everywhere. It's, you'll get a tour, because I think in order for you guys to properly use it, as well as staff, we're all going to need to get some training. And then I also just wanted to update you. I believe I've shared with you at some point over the last year that we were proceeding with this land absorption study. And as part of that effort, we using a consultant from the Davis area, BAE. They're a group we used previously when we were doing the general plan update back in 2008. And they're helping us look at, again, if you may or may not remember when we met with the 5-year review of the general plan, we came and said, hey, we've got plenty of land. There's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. We haven't been growing as fast as we thought we have. We went to council, but all along the way, we had folks kind of chiming in saying, well, there's vacant land, but is it really readily available? And so we've always acknowledged at some level that there are some constraints, whether they're environmental, whether there's some zoning or general planning consistencies, whether there's willing landowners or infrastructure. So in response to those queries, though, the council said, hey, go forward with this effort. We are now proceeding. We're going full bore. We've been on some pretty fun field tours with our consultant, going around, getting them familiar with the city and the community. And then about a week and a half ago, they were here for just an incredible all-day session where they were started off with a 7 o'clock breakfast at Nash's with some of the local developers that do you know, they have a regular meeting, and then they had interviews all day long with real estate and other folks in the development community, and they ended their day at about 5:30 with some of the single-family developers, run over consortium. Anyway, they got a full day's worth of work in, and they've now set me and my team up with city staff, kind of a vacant inventory, and we're going through this matrix of, again, some of the issues I raised, what might constrain development. And so anyway, it's going to be a really important component piece that will come back to you guys probably first as far as for consideration. Remember last year we came forward with a 5-year review, Title 19 amendments, Sustainability Indicators Report. Well, this is going to be a smaller version of that, but the crux of it's going to be the absorption study, some more Title 19 amendments that we've been looking at, and again, the indicators report. So I'm thinking May. This report, though, will dictate the schedule for us coming back to you guys. Just wanted you guys to know that's underway, though.
Do you see the report being out for a period of time before we review it?
Probably, in all fairness.
Okay, anything else? All right, we will adjourn to Thursday, March 15th. Thank you.